General Exenor stood on the observation deck of his flagship, the Ravager, staring out into the vastness of space. The Azthar Empire had already conquered countless worlds, leaving nothing but ashes in its wake. Their fleet, unmatched in size and firepower, had razed civilizations and crushed entire species. Xynor, a battle-hardened leader, had led every campaign with ruthless efficiency, always aiming to break the spirit of his enemies before the first shot was fired. He had never failed. Earth was no different. In his mind, it was just another planet, home to a young, primitive species that had yet to understand their place in the galaxy. Humanity had its achievements: space travel, advanced technology, even colonization of a few nearby planets, but they were nothing compared to the Azthar. They were nothing compared to him. His mission was simple: to conquer Earth and add it to the growing Azthar Empire. He was to break its defenses, wipe out its leadership, and establish control within days. There would be no need for prolonged battles. Humanity, he believed, would crumble beneath the might of the Azthar. Asa, the Ravager, descended into Earth's atmosphere. Xynor surveyed the damage his fleet had already begun to inflict. Massive explosions rumbled through the cities below, sending plumes of smoke into the sky. The human resistance had been feeble. They had tried to fight back with everything they had, but it was clear from the first encounter that they stood no chance. Their weapons couldn't penetrate the Azthar shields. Their cities fell like dominoes. Within hours, humanity would be broken. His orders were clear: neutralize Earth's remaining leadership, destroy the global communications network, and disable all military operations. Once that was done, the Azthar would claim Earth's resources, using them to fuel their war machine and expand their territory further. Xynor had done this before, countless times. He had conquered worlds, crushed enemies, and extinguished hopes. But Earth was different. It was more beautiful, more vibrant than most planets he had encountered. It had a raw, untamed energy to it, one that intrigued him. As the hours passed, the Ravager came closer to the final phase of its assault. Xynor's fleet had already wiped out major cities, and now the final push would be to disable the human military's last stronghold, which lay in a remote region of what had once been a thriving metropolis. He moved through the war room, directing his commanders, preparing for the last strike. Then something unexpected happened. Xynor paused. His gaze narrowed as his tactical officers displayed the incoming image on the holoscreen. A solitary figure stood in the midst of the wreckage, in the very center of the city that had just been bombed into oblivion. It was a child. Her small frame stood against the towering ruins, a stark contrast to the devastation around her. She was alone, unafraid, and somehow unmoved by the destruction. Xynor's first instinct was to dismiss it as an anomaly, just another frightened human child cowering in fear. But then, something about her drew him in. She didn't flinch as the debris fell around her, didn't run or hide. Her eyes met his through the holoscreen, and Xynor felt a strange shiver run down his spine. In the depths of her gaze, there was no fear, no trembling hands, no plea for mercy. It was something deeper, a quiet, unwavering confidence. The kind of confidence he had seen in warriors before battle, but never in someone so young. It was almost defiant. "Who is she?" Xynor asked, his voice steady, but with an edge of curiosity. "Unknown," General replied one of his officers. "She's been reported as one of the survivors from the city's outskirts. No weapons detected. She's just standing there." Xynor's lips curled into a thin smile. This was nothing. Just another human who had managed to survive the carnage. But as he ordered the final bombardment of the city, his thoughts lingered on the child. Why hadn't she run? Why wasn't she begging for her life like the others? It made no sense to him. He had seen billions of species cower before the might of the Azthar, and yet here was this child, standing alone, defiantly watching his fleet. Without thinking, he ordered a temporary halt to the bombardment. "Have her brought aboard," Xynor commanded, his voice cutting through the tense atmosphere of the war room. His officers exchanged confused glances, but followed his orders without question. Within moments, A retrieval team was dispatched to locate and apprehend the child. ASA, the child was brought aboard the Ravager. Xiner met her face to face for the first time. She was small, perhaps no older than 10, but her eyes held an intensity that was unlike anything Xiner had ever seen. She stood tall, even in his presence, unwavering. No tears. No pleading. Just those eyes, locked onto his with a calmness that defied her situation. "Why are you doing this?" the child asked, her voice steady and clear, cutting through the silence. Xiner raised an eyebrow, taken aback by her boldness. "Why?" he repeated, as if the question itself was absurd. "I am here to conquer your world, to expand the Azthar Empire. You are weak. Your resistance is futile." The child didn't flinch. Instead, she looked up at him and asked one simple question: "Why do you want to destroy us?" The words hit Xiner like a physical blow. For the first time in his life, he was faced with a question that demanded an answer, a question he didn't have an immediate response to. He had always believed that conquest was the natural state of the galaxy, that strength and power were the ultimate measures of worth. But this child, standing before him, seemed to question everything he had known. Her question lingered in his mind long after she had been taken away. For the first time, he wondered if there might be another way. Could he truly justify the destruction of an entire species? Could the Azthar way of life really be the right one? Xinor's mind was a battlefield. He had seen thousands of planets fall under his command, civilizations wiped from existence without a second thought. But Mara, the human child, had altered something within him. Her unwavering defiance, her simple question, "Why do you want to destroy us?" had sparked a fire in his mind that he couldn't extinguish. For the first time in his long career, Xiner found himself questioning his mission, the very purpose of his existence. He had continued with his campaign, of course. The Azthar war machine was unstoppable, and Xiner, ever the efficient leader, followed through with his orders. Cities burned, governments fell, and Earth's once proud military had begun to crumble under the might of the Azthar forces. Yet, as his fleet tore through the planet's defenses, a strange thing happened. The child's face haunted him. It was in his mind every time he gave the order to strike. That small, defiant figure standing alone amid the ruins, staring up at him with those piercing eyes. He couldn't shake the image. Unable to understand his growing unease, Xiner began to seek out Mara. He would watch her from a distance, observing her movements, her interactions with others. What he found perplexed him. Unlike most of the humans he encountered who trembled in fear, begging for mercy, Mara was calm, composed, and remarkably resilient. She didn't run from danger. She confronted it with a quiet defiance. There was a strength in her, but it wasn't the physical strength Xiner was used to seeing in warriors. It was something else, something deeper. It was hope. Mara, he learned, was part of a small but determined group of survivors who refused to bow to the Azthar. They had taken refuge in the remnants of Earth's forgotten underground cities, a vast network of tunnels and bunkers left behind by a civilization long lost to history. This community, once considered insignificant by the invading forces, had proven to be remarkably resilient. They fought with ingenuity, using Earth's technology to stage guerrilla attacks and disrupt Azthar operations. But unlike the larger human resistance movements, this community had one defining characteristic. Their unity was rooted not in fear, but in hope. They fought not to survive, but because they believed that something better was possible. Xiner's curiosity about this group grew. He found himself seeking out information about them, learning about their ways of life, their motivations. The more he observed, the more he realized that Mara's people were not the mindless creatures he had once believed humans to be. They were intelligent, resourceful, and remarkably adaptable. And there was something else, something that he could not ignore. In the heart of their underground cities, buried deep within the forgotten ruins of a previous era, they had a secret. A relic. An ancient piece of technology that, according to human legends, could alter the balance of the war. The relic was said to be of immense power, far beyond anything the Azthar possessed. It was a remnant of an ancient civilization that predated even the Azthar Empire. Zainor's advisors had long suspected that humanity's technological progress had been influenced by this long-lost race. And now, with Earth on the brink of collapse, that technology might be the key to turning the tide. He knew that obtaining the relic would secure Asthar dominance over the galaxy. But as he gathered more information, Zainor found himself torn. His growing empathy for Mara and her people had planted a seed of doubt in his mind. Should he exploit the relic's power to crush humanity once and for all? Or should he allow the humans to keep their secret, to give them a fighting chance, even if it meant risking his own defeat? It was a moral quandary Exenor had never faced before. He had always been a conqueror, a leader who imposed his will on others without hesitation. But now, with Mara's face etched into his thoughts, he wasn't so sure. His advisors, too, were growing uneasy. They had seen the change in him, the subtle hesitation in his orders, the moments of doubt when he stood before the holographic war maps, staring at the locations of human resistance cells. Zainor was not the same leader he had been before. Meanwhile, Mara's community had begun to fracture. While some of her people believed the relic was their only hope, others feared it. They feared what might happen if the Asthar, or worse, someone else got their hands on it. They wanted to destroy it, to ensure it never fell into the wrong hands. It was a dangerous weapon, they believed, and using it could come at a steep cost. The debate grew heated, dividing the community. Some wanted to fight with everything they had, using the relic to strike back against the Asthar. Others believed that the relic's power was too great for any one group to control, and they would rather see it buried forever. In the midst of this turmoil, Einar had a rare opportunity to meet Mara once more. This time, it wasn't through surveillance or observation. It was personal. He had arranged for a brief encounter. He had been unable to get her out of his mind. He needed answers. When Mara saw him, she didn't flinch. She didn't cower. She simply stood there, her gaze unwavering. Zainor was struck by her calmness in the face of what should have been certain death. "I know why you're here," she said quietly. "You're here because you're wondering if there's more to us than just fear." And there is, Zainor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her closely. "Why do you fight?" he asked, his voice low, almost to himself. "Because we have to," Mara replied. "Because we can. Because we believe that things can change. And because you can change, too." The words struck Zainor with a force he hadn't expected. She believed he could change. It was as if Mara saw something in him that he hadn't seen in himself for a long time. She saw a potential for something beyond conquest. She saw a possibility for redemption. Zainor was faced with an impossible choice. His duty as a conqueror pulled him one way, but the quiet, persistent voice of Mara tugged him in another. In the war that raged inside him, he was no longer sure which side he was on. And as Mara spoke of hope, the one thing he had long since lost, he couldn't help but wonder if the Asthar's quest for domination was truly worth it. The more he learned, the more the line between ally and enemy blurred. Mara's people weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for something greater. And now, for the first time, Zainor wondered if that was something he could fight for too. Zainor's mind had never been more torn. The weight of his past, his identity as an Asthar general, and the crushing expectations of his people had always been clear. His duty was simple: conquer, destroy, expand. It was the natural order of the galaxy. But Mara, the human child who had once stood before him in defiance, had shattered that clarity. She had shown him a side of humanity that he could no longer ignore, the capacity for hope, for change, for something greater than domination. The tipping point came one evening, as Zainor and Mara stood in the ruins of an ancient city deep within Earth's underground. She had invited him to this place, revealing the true nature of the technology hidden beneath the Earth's surface, a relic of a forgotten race whose understanding of the universe far surpassed anything the Asthar had ever achieved. "Mara, you've already told me what this relic can do," Zainor said, his voice strained. He had already learned enough about its power to reshape the very fabric of existence, but the truth felt impossible to grasp. "But I don't understand. If it can alter history itself, why haven't your people used it already? Why risk everything now?" Mara's eyes were serious, yet filled with an unwavering trust. Because, she said slowly, we don't know how to wield it safely. The power within it could destroy everything, including Earth. It's not just a weapon. It's a force that can transcend time and space. It could change the course of the entire galaxy. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. But we've never had a choice before. You're the one who has to decide. If anyone can understand the danger and choose wisely, it's you, Sinor. The revelation hit Exenor like a wave. The ancient technology Mara spoke of wasn't merely a tool to win a battle. It was something far more dangerous. If activated recklessly, it could obliterate not just Earth but the entire solar system, destabilizing the galaxy in the process. Humanity had no way of controlling it. No one did. But if used wisely, it could offer them a chance to send a powerful message across the galaxy, one that could shift the balance of power entirely. Sinor's eyes narrowed as the truth began to form. And if I refuse to use it? He asked, voice low, almost as if to himself. Mara stepped closer, her gaze unshaken. If you refuse, humanity will perish. Your fleet will wipe us out, just like you've done to every other world. But if you use it, Exenor, if you truly understand the consequences, you could stop this war, not through force, but through understanding. A silence fell between them, filled only with the distant echoes of the ruined city. Sinor's thoughts raced. His people had conquered civilizations for eons. They had destroyed countless worlds, each one falling under their might without question. The Asthar had always been the conquerors, never the conquered. And to back down now? To throw away everything he had fought for? The very idea seemed like an affront to the history of his people. But in the depths of his mind, he understood Mara's words. He had already begun to question the Asthar's doctrine of conquest. Over the years, he had seen countless worlds fall, countless civilizations destroyed in the name of expansion. And what had it brought the Asthar? Endless wars, endless suffering, endless cycles of violence. The galaxy had been shaped by the unending hunger for power, for dominance. Sinor now saw that the real enemy was not Mara, not humanity, not even the Asthar. The true enemy was the cycle itself, the belief that conquest was the only path to survival, to glory. The realization hit him with the force of a crushing blow. He had been taught to believe that his people were superior, that their strength was the measure of their worth. But as he looked at Mara, so small, yet so full of strength and hope, he saw something that the Asthar had lost long ago. The capacity to change. The capacity to break free of the cycle. Sinor's chest tightened. I've never been faced with a choice like this, he admitted quietly. To back down would mean to lose everything. The Asthar would see me as weak. But to go against my people, I would be committing treason. Mara looked at him, her eyes softening. It's not treason to choose peace, Sinor. It's not weakness to protect life. For the first time, Sinor found himself questioning everything. Could he truly betray his own people for the sake of a fragile hope? Could he embrace humanity's belief in change, even if it meant destroying the very foundations of his own identity? To honor his pride, to continue with the war, would mean slaughtering an entire species, perhaps even the entire solar system. But to stand down, to break away from the cycle of violence, would mean going against everything he had ever known. He thought of the Asthar's endless conquest, of the countless worlds reduced to ashes, and for the first time, he saw the futility of it all. He thought of Mara, her unshakable faith, her quiet courage, and he knew, deep down, that she was right. There was another way. A way that didn't involve the destruction of everything in its path. In a painful moment of clarity, Sinor knew what he had to do. He couldn't let the cycle continue. He couldn't let his people destroy another world, another species, just for the sake of conquest. He would have to make a choice that would change everything. I will not destroy Earth, Sinor said, his voice filled with determination. I will not let the Asthar continue this cycle. But I need your help, Mara. I need your people to help me understand how to wield this technology without destroying everything. Mara's eyes softened with relief, and for the first time, she smiled. You'll be able to understand, Xanor. I know you will. Together, we can stop this war. Together, we can change the galaxy. As Xanor stood there, the weight of his decision heavy on his shoulders, he realized that he had not just made a choice about the fate of Earth. He had made a choice about the future of the entire galaxy. The path he was about to walk would not be easy. It would cost him more than he could ever imagine. But it was a path he had to take. For peace. For hope. For change. And in that moment, Xanor understood. Peace wasn't just the absence of war, it was the willingness to confront the cycles of violence that kept the galaxy in turmoil. It was the willingness to choose something better, even when it seemed impossible. The stars of the Asthar fleet hung like cold, unfeeling sentinels in the darkness, their power and size an overwhelming presence. Siner stood at the center of the command deck, the weight of his decision settling heavily on his shoulders. The murmurs of disbelief from his crew echoed around him as they awaited his command. For a moment, he wondered if he had made the right choice. But deep inside, he knew that there was no turning back. The decision had already been made. His hand hovered over the comlink, his mind racing with the faces of the people he had once fought alongside. His entire life had been spent in the pursuit of conquest, in the belief that strength was the only measure of worth. Yet, in the span of a few days, everything had changed. Mara, a human child, had shown him that power did not reside in destruction. It resided in the capacity for change. And now, he was about to test that belief. "Fleet Command, this is General Siner," he said, his voice steady but carrying a finality that cut through the silence. "I hereby order the Asthar forces to stand down. All operations cease immediately. Do not engage Earth. Do not fire on humanity." The silence that followed was deafening. His officers, the very ones who had fought beside him for years, stared at him in stunned silence. It was a moment suspended in time, as if the entire galaxy were holding its breath. "Sir, are you mad?" came a voice from behind him, one of his most trusted lieutenants. "This is a betrayal. You're abandoning the mission. You're abandoning us." Siner's gaze remained fixed ahead, though the weight of his decision pressed against his chest. He could feel the eyes of his fleet on him, but he was no longer the man he once was. He had been changed by the simple, unshakable belief of a child who had shown him a different path. "I am not abandoning you," Xanor said quietly, his voice not without a trace of sadness. "I am choosing a different future. The future of this galaxy does not lie in war. It lies in the possibility of peace." The harsh sound of an officer slamming his fist against a console shattered the silence. "This is treason. You would turn your back on the Asthar Empire? After everything we fought for?" Another officer, one who had once admired Xanor's unyielding resolve, now stared at him with contempt. Siner's gaze hardened. "Treason?" He paused for a moment, considering the weight of the word. "Maybe. But we've been living in the shadow of a lie for too long. We have conquered, and in doing so, we have lost what made us who we are. I choose to stop the cycle. I choose to let humanity live." The words hung in the air, thick with the tension of an impossible choice. His fleet, his comrades, his people, they all expected him to obey their orders. They expected him to crush humanity, just as he had done to countless civilizations before. But Exile knew that to continue down that path would only lead to more bloodshed, more destruction. He would not be part of that anymore. "I have made my choice," Siner said, his voice firm, unwavering. "You may consider me a traitor, but I refuse to be part of the cycle of endless conquest." With that, he turned and left the command deck, his mind already set on what he had to do next. He knew that his actions would have consequences. He was already prepared to face them. His reputation, the one that had been built on years of ruthless victories, was now in tatters. He would be branded a disgrace, cast out by his own people. But in his heart, Siner knew that he had done the right thing. The cost of victory was steep. Earth was saved, but the Asthar Empire had no place for a leader who had chosen to defy the very nature of their existence. Siner was exiled, left to wander the galaxy alone. His once proud name was now synonymous with betrayal. The Asdar would never forgive him, and he knew that he would never be able to return to his people. Yet, as he drifted through the endless expanse of space, there was a strange peace within him. His decision had been made not out of fear, but out of a newfound understanding of what truly mattered. The Asdar had always believed that strength was defined by domination, by the ability to crush others. But Exinor had learned that strength could also be found in the willingness to change, in the ability to choose peace over war. Back on Earth, Mara's community began to rebuild, not just to survive, but to thrive. The relic, the ancient technology that had once been a symbol of destruction, was now being used to help humanity grow, to advance without fear of annihilation. The hope that had once seemed impossible now seemed within reach. Humanity, against all odds, had survived, and now, with the help of Sinor's decision, they could build a future of their own. But as Exinor looked back at Earth from his exile, a lingering question gnawed at him. Was this true victory? Was his decision to turn away from conquest the true measure of strength? Or had he simply traded one form of power for another? He thought about the Asdar, their unyielding pursuit of dominance, and wondered if they would ever understand the choice he had made. But then he remembered Mara, the child who had shown him a different way. It was not through war, not through victory in the traditional sense, that strength was proven. It was in the capacity to change, to learn, to seek peace, even when it seemed impossible. ASX Sinor floated in the silence of space. He wondered, what does it mean to conquer? Is it to dominate, to destroy, or is it to understand, to find harmony in a universe that often seems built on conflict? What does it mean to truly win? In the quiet of his exile, Xenor realized that he had found something far more important than conquest. He had found the possibility of something greater, peace and understanding. And in that moment, he understood true strength was not in the ability to conquer, but in the ability to choose a path that led to a better future for all. And maybe, just maybe, that was the greatest victory of all.